Seth Rogen and a number of other celebrity friends head over to James Franco's new Hollywood home to party like there's no tomorrow. Problem is, there really is no tomorrow as Judgment Day is nigh, and these celebrities find themselves in the middle of an Earth-ending apocalypse. Anybody want to volunteer to go first on this one?
I'm going first
I-
on Man of Steel, so someone else.
I just did a lot of talking, so why don't you go first, Dave?
Okay. So little history on where I'm coming from this movie. From the moment I heard of this movie and its premise, with all these actors playing themselves, and like the idea that it's like during the apocalypse or like the end of the world, I pretty much knew that they had a brilliant concept on their hands. But I also knew that given who was involved in this film, that they had a lot working against them, which made me a little bit cautiously optimistic towards it. First and foremost, these guys usually have a bad tendency to make their films a little bit too long for their own good. Some of my favorite films that these guys have made, stuff like Pineapple Express, Funny People, and the 5-Year Engagement, and this past year's This Is 40, I've enjoyed all those movies, but they've always been way too long for their own good. And second is they generally tend to have way too many scenes with like endless improv, where they're just just too much riffing on each other, and also usually too much of a focus on like secondary characters that never go anywhere or have any sort of impact on the story overall. So yeah, and on top of that, I've been actively avoiding as many trailers as possible, because also another side effect with these guys' movies, they usually tend to give away all their best jokes in the trailers. Which after seeing the trailers for this, after seeing it, I'm really glad I did that, because they are giving away a lot. Not everything, but a lot. So imagine how happy I was when this turned out to be probably one of the funniest movies of the year, if not the funniest. There was no endless improv. There was a couple scenes in there where they were riffing off each other, but I actually thought that they did a good job with it, and it wasn't continuous like it usually is. There were no side characters eating up screen time, and this is quite possibly the most consistently funny movie any of these guys has ever made. But without a doubt, what sealed the deal for me on this movie, like I already mentioned in the outset, is the fact that these guys all decided to play themselves, like exaggerated versions of themselves. Like it's almost like the movie almost works as like a bit of fan fiction. Like you can almost picture like people writing like their own like ideas of what these actors' lives are outside of movies, and this is like some weird twisted version of that. The whole movie works almost like an inside joke, where the actors themselves are writing their own fan fiction, where they were just kind of like sitting around a table and just talking about the worst possible things that could happen to them during an event like the apocalypse, and because of that, there's another movie series that kind of does what this did, which is the Grown Ups movies, the Adam Sandler and getting together with all his friends. That's exactly what this movie felt like to me, but this felt like that premise done right, where they clearly were just having a good time making this movie together, but at the same time, it was clever, it was smart, it was funny, and I didn't feel insulted by the fact that I was just watching these guys having a vacation, like I did with the Adam Sandler movies. But yeah, this movie was just hilarious. I really enjoyed all the stuff that happened in this. There was a lot of crazy stuff that just kind of came out of nowhere. Like there's this like running thing through the entire movie where apparently these guys have a endless fascination with male genitalia, because it's all throughout this movie in different forms. And I love all the cameos that showed up in this movie. The two that were ruined in the trailers were Michael Cera and Emma Watson. Even though that their cameos were ruined, I still really love them in this. This is probably Michael Cera's best movie next to Scott Pilgrim. I really like the stuff that they did with him in this movie, especially if since he was supposed to be playing himself. All the actors in this movie, I thought, did a really good job. Considering that they were balancing a fine line between their public personality and maybe like like I mentioned, exaggerated versions of their personal lives.
They were spoofing themselves.
Yeah, exactly. They were spoofing themselves. And just Danny McBride, I loved him in this movie. I know that he's not everybody's cup of tea, that he can get really annoying, but I think they did a really good job of playing into that with his character. I loved like the latent homosexuality between James Franco and Seth Rogen. Like that stuff I just found hilarious. There's not much more I could talk about without going into heavy spoilers, because like I said, there are a number of jokes in this movie that you are just better experienced fresh for the first time and not having anybody tell you about them. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I do have just maybe a couple negatives to the film. First of all, is the pacing. It felt a little off at times. I think maybe they spent a little bit too much time in that house. It wasn't really bad, but there were a couple times where I did notice, like, wow, they've been in that house for a very long time. But I think they found a good number of ways to freshen it up every time I started thinking that. And the couple, maybe a handful of jokes didn't really land the way that they should have for me. I think the Gangnam Style joke was a little bit old. I don't think that is quite as funny as it would have been like a year ago. But without a doubt, though, and all that stuff aside, I think this is a very high recommendation for me. This is easily my favorite movie of the summer so far, which is saying a lot, considering we still have another movie to talk about on here. And easily, it's in the top 10 for me for the year. This is probably one of the most original concepts I've seen for a movie, and they absolutely nailed it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film, and I think just about everybody out there should see it. And I guess it should come with a warning. You really have to be into these guys' comedies to get into this movie. If you don't like any of the movies that I mentioned earlier, like Pineapple Express and This Is 40, chances are you might not either get the humor or enjoy the humor that these guys have in this movie, because it's very similar to that. But yeah, so that's it for me. Who would like to go next?
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. So I saw this movie at AMC Marina Del Rey, and I just want to say that the blue hamburger is delicious.
This sounds very much like a James review.
No, but it's a little different too, because I actually wanted to see this movie, where James last week didn't want to see any of the movies. And this is actually a good movie, I think, to have this dining experience at, because you have a nice meal, you're laughing, you're having fun. As long as no one chokes, you're in good shape. One thing that I was a little bit worried about was you brought up the pace, Dave, earlier.
Yeah.
I would say in the beginning it's a little bit slow to ramp up. I don't know if that's because you know what eventually happens, but I don't know. It's just I never done drugs in my life, and I don't know how it is or anything like that, but sometimes it could be too much in a way, and I don't really care about it, but it seemed to drag a little bit too long. The one character you didn't bring up in this movie that I really enjoyed, and Michael Cera, I really wish he was in the movie a little bit longer, because like you said, it was his best movie since Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
And I think it played out perfectly because of how people somewhat hate him now in movies, so it made it even better. But I thought Jonah Hill was awesome.
Yes.
Just the way he was acting and his over the top kindness and everything else was perfect. Especially what eventually happens to him. And also the one thing I wanted to bring up is kind of the religious overtone to this movie that happens eventually. When you find out what's really happened and what could happen if you did certain things. I thought that was really really well thought out. I loved what happened to Franco at an eventual part of the movie. I don't want to say who's in it that does a surprise cameo, but my girlfriend who was in it was laughing pretty hard about that stuff too. So
yeah, don't go to IMDb because he's right there on the front.
Okay.
So.
But I had a really good time with the movie. I mean, it was fun, even with the slow parts and everything else. You really cared about the characters. I loved how they somewhat played themselves in an over-exaggerated state, but it was fun. And I could really see nothing really bad about the movie. Maybe some scenes it went a little bit too long, but that whole my favorite scene, and I'll bring it. It's not really a spoiler because I won't tell you what they talk about, but that whole Daniel McBride and James Franco conversation was one of the funniest things I've seen in a while.
But the porn mag, right?
Yeah, that whole conversation just made me laugh out loud. And the other one I also want to give a shout out to is great Craig Robinson. And most people will be familiar with it in The Office. He's a black guy that became a manager. He used to work in the downstairs shipping department. And I think this is maybe his first. I guess what was the other Hot Tub Time Machine he was in?
He was in Hot Tub Time Machine. He was in your movie from earlier this summer, The Peoples.
Okay, so you bastard. But I thought he did a really good job as well, especially when eventually what happens to him as well was great. So
Yeah.
good stuff. I highly recommend seeing it, especially if you're in a mood for a good comedy and have a nice laugh. It's definitely up there.
Okay. James, what did you think of This Is the End?
Okay, so I'm also one of the people who actively avoided the trailers for this movie, and I still haven't seen the trailer, so I don't know what they ruined. But
they ruined the Jonah Hill surprise.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to say I didn't really know anything that was going to go on. The one thing that was ruined for me was what ultimately happens to Michael Cera. Because I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, that's in the trailer also.
I see.
Oh my
So
God.
I probably saw a glimpse of it.
Actually, everything in the beginning when the hole rips open in front of Franco's house is in the trailer.
Okay. God. So so if it's not too late, then I recommend that people do not watch a trailer for this movie.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea where it was going. And the beginning of the movie shows in the background that this sinkhole has opened up in Guatemala or something like that. So there's a point in time where I was thinking maybe it's just about, all these sinkholes opening up all over the world, right? But then it's very soon about more than that.
Yeah.
Right. And where it started going, I was like, can this be real? And I started thinking, is this like someone's drug-induced haze? But yeah, it goes way over the top, and it's funny. I was very impressed by, you say that practically everyone in this movie is playing themselves.
Yeah.
And, well, they are playing themselves by name.
Yeah.
But in terms of by character, they're playing like themselves. And some of them go way over the top to the extent, you guys are saying, and I understand that there's a lot of people who don't necessarily like Michael Cera. I've liked Michael Cera in everything that he's done.
Oh.
But yeah, besides Scott Pilgrim, this is the best thing. Maybe besides Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's amazing in that. But this is one of the best things that he's ever done. And I was actually surprised that he and his people would allow him to do some of the things that he was doing in this movie and represent it as himself, right? He's like this.
The cell phone gag was awesome. This is so embarrassing.
And then also, like you guys said, there is a cameo at the end where I was like, why would this person agree to do this? I don't, and there were people I will say teenage girls in our theater who were screaming no, no. So, and the thing that I didn't write down much about this movie, but the thing I wrote down that I had to talk about, Brian already stole the thunder a little bit, that porno mag scene. Dave, I thought you were about to complain about this because, David, in your review, you were saying that, sometimes they improv and sometimes it goes too long and whatever.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that a lot of this was improv, but it was off the charts hilarious.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was a little bit more controlled. Like, I mean, that was probably the longest bit of improv they had in the entire movie, and I think because of that, it was fine. It's usually when it's back to back is when it gets tiresome.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
I like how most of the time they had to name each other by their full names.
it's so ridiculous.
So yeah, I thought this movie was very funny, and I mean it was funny, much funnier than I expected it to be. I'm just thinking back. I don't think I have any qualms in saying it's the funniest movie this year, if not the funniest movie I've seen in a year. So going back like to this time last year.
Yeah, and I think also maybe what would probably help people's enjoyment of this movie is if you have some sort of like at least vague idea of these guys, the films that these guys have made in the past.
Well, see, that's the thing I was going to go into next, is that each of these individuals, and there's a core, like the party that starts out this movie is filled with tons of recognizable faces. But the movie is about a core group of these partygoers, and, you know, including Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill, and it's James Franco's house that the party takes place in, Craig Robinson and all of them, right? So it's about a core group of these people, and each of them has a unique and a specific kind of style and sense of humor, and I like almost all of them. I'm not the biggest Danny McBride fan.
Yeah.
But I like almost all of them, and so I'm kind of thinking that it is kind of necessary to enjoy these people's humor, because if you don't like these guys, I don't know how funny you're going to think this movie is.
Yeah. But I was also talking about their work in general, because a lot of the jokes and gags in this movie are based off of like stuff that they've done together. You know,
It almost there's a scene that almost hold on a second. Sorry about that. There's a scene that almost requires an intimate knowledge of Pineapple Express.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But
So yeah, the one thing I wanted to ask you, Dave, was did you notice who the cinematographer was?
no, I didn't.
The cinematography was done by Brandon Trost.
Oh. Okay. Before you move on from that, I did when I was looking, because you know how you mentioned in the beginning that there's like a number of celebrities and stuff at the party. I knew that IMDb would list a lot of the ones that maybe I didn't see, and one of the people listed in the list of people at the party that I did not see was Jason Trost.
I only saw that because I wanted to confirm that I saw Brandon Trost's name on there.
Okay.
And then, you know, I went to IMDb and then I did a search Trost, and the first one that comes up is J-Tro. And I was like, oh, I missed, like that almost requires me to go back and see this movie again to pick out J-Tro for those who don't know, from the FP.
Yeah, James' favorite movie from last year.
Ah, boy. So
when he was talking about comedies, this was number one. FP was number one last year.
okay, let's move on. So anyway, yeah, the Trost family is associated with this movie.
Interesting.
So yeah, overall, it's hard for me to say it because there were a lot of ways for this movie to go wrong.
Yes.
It could have easily been a travesty. It could have easily sucked really bad. And considering like the direction that they took this movie with, like who the villains actually are in this movie, this could have been really, really bad.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny almost from beginning to end. Like I wasn't that happy with the setup of this kind of strife between Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel, but that actually has a place in this movie ultimately. And so yeah, so I end up liking the whole thing practically.
Okay. Yeah, and I like that's the overall indication that everybody we see after the apocalypse is basically somebody that was not welcomed into heaven. I like. I mean, they don't really outright say that, but I like the idea that no matter who we see, you know, it's like the fact that we see Emma Watson. It's like, oh, well, what kind of bad shit has she done? So I was just, you know, I found that to be kind of interesting. But and Brian touched upon it also a little bit about the religious stuff in this movie. I was really surprised at how well they handled the religious stuff, because it really does kind of straddle the fine line of like making fun of religion by, you know, some of the things they do to try to redeem themselves, and you know, and they never really crossed that line, I guess is what I'm saying, into just outright hatred. And I thought that was really well executed on their part with how they handled all the religious stuff. So.
But for those who might not know, let me just tell you, it doesn't work this way. Like, 'cause these are some coke snorting, pot smoking, carousing dudes, and yeah, you can't just like do one good deed and go to heaven.
You mean we can't sit in the car and compliment each other?
But it sounded like something they would do.
Yeah, it's like I was expecting it to happen by now.
That's why What Happens to Franco makes it really good.
Oh my God! And James, do you think that the fact that you don't really care for Danny McBride, do you think that it was a smart idea by having him go down the path he went down?
Absolutely, yes. That worked for me.
Yeah.
If he had been in one of the other roles in terms of personality, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But the way that maybe that's because that's how he is, and that's what my perception of him is. It just like fit.
Yes. Yeah, my girlfriend doesn't care for him either, but she was fine with him in that role.
Yeah.
Because it totally just fits your idea of who he is.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, all three of us are high recommends on that. That's great. I'm not sure if you guys stayed or not, but were you guys surprised that there was nothing at the end of the credits for this thing?
I stayed to the very end, and yeah, I was a little bit surprised.
This movie seemed ripe for the possibility to put so many different things at the end credits.
Yeah.
And
Emma Watson. That's what the people who stayed around in my theater said they expected to see what happened to Emma Watson.
that would have been great. That would have been great if we would have saw what happened to her. You know, I mean, man, I wish I could say this without spoiling something, but man. Well, spoilers for a second here. So skip ahead.
Wait. Let me change this.
Oh, I was gonna say skip ahead just a minute, just so I could say this one thing.
All right, go ahead.
It would have been great, like had we seen Emma Watson in a slave Leia outfit being controlled by Danny McBride. That would have been great. That way he would have had options.
Oh boy.
I could slide right in there whenever I want to. Look at that.
I'm leaving this alone.
Okay. Anyways.
So are we out of spoilers now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I recalled one thing that I wanted to say. And this is
You
actually
didn't move to the right. You're constantly cut off. Thank you.
How's this?
Much better.
I leaned over.
Huh.
Okay. So anyway, I do have a kind of criticism about the film, and it's one thing, a small part of one scene that I really did not like. They've been, not just this movie, but like in other places, I've seen they kind of make light of Rihanna and physical violence.
Oh no.
And that scene where they had like some slapping between Rihanna and another character, that was uncomfortable to me. That doesn't seem like, that seems a little too close to home.
Even though the person that did it was coked out of their mind.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, when you're talking about someone who is famously a victim of domestic violence, to have a male person like kind of he didn't strike her like with a fist, but he slapped her.
Yeah.
But I have a whole thing, but I won't go on a 10.
He slapped her in like a degrading way.
Yeah, exactly.
She had to allow it. That seemed to be filmed, right?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Okay. Well, that's her then, her decision.
No, but I mean, I don't think she's the one who should be in control of that. Just because she's okay with that doesn't make it okay. That's like if you can go out and find one black person who's willing to do some really degrading kind of menstrual thing. That doesn't make it okay.
Well, that's a whole discussion. I won't even bring it up. Well, all right.
So that is my to use one of Dave's phrase, not to put too fine a point on it. But overall, I like this movie a lot. But that one particular thing bothered me significantly.
Okay.
You're right, James.
Oh boy.
All right.
That.
So while those two are adjusting,
How's your left?
that's going to wrap things up for that segment, which is going to lead us into our final film of the week, Man of Steel.
We're not calling Miguel?
Oh, shit. I should, huh? Okay. Well, actually, okay. So let me try this. All right.
Had you intended to have him at the beginning of the segment?
No. I was figuring.
Okay.
I was figuring. Actually, Brian brought it up at the right point, right before we got in there into the thing. So let's try this. We're gonna try and contact Miguel to get his thoughts on the film. We may end up going to spoilers because of that. Don't have his number programmed in here. There it is. Okay, let's see how this works. We've never done this before, so let's see how this works out. He probably won't even answer. That's how much of a lazy ass he is. Let me talk first if he picks up.
Yeah, he wouldn't know who I am. Or maybe he would. I'm the voice of the LRA show. I think we're getting voicemail.
Maybe.
He probably sees your name and is like, no, not picking up.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, Miguel.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm chilling. What's going on?
Nothing. So just let you know, you are currently on air.
I'm what?
You're on the podcast.
Oh.
So
Very funny.
I've got Brian and James here with me.
Hey,
So,
Miguel.
Brian,
Hello.
And we just finished talking about This Is the End, and I know you've seen that movie, so I figured I'd call you so you can give your opinion on that movie.
all right. I'm surprised this is on the guest.
What's that?
I'm like a surprise guest, but the surprise is on the guest.
Yes. So okay, it's been a while since you've been on here, but on the actual podcast itself, aside from the special rewind episodes, but I've been wanting to get you on here for a while, and I figured the only way to do it is by surprising you like this. So
surprising. Oh, hope my connection's okay. I'm on my cell phone. I went and saw This Is the End. Saw it on opening day. I've always been a fan of all of the movies of those filmmakers. I like Your Highness, Pineapple Express, all of those. So I thought this movie was up my alley, and went and checked it out, and I had a blast watching it. I mean, I didn't really. I thought it was going to be like an alien invasion movie, or maybe a spin on kind of like a movie that makes fun of the movies like 2012 and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was about the Rapture, so all the Rapture stuff, that was all surprise to me. Luckily, I didn't see any trailer beyond the teaser trailer at the beginning, so nothing was ruined for me. But I mean, I had a blast watching it. I mean, I know I was talking to you earlier in the week, and I mentioned this is Adam Sandler needs to take a note on how a friend movie should be made. This is what it should be like when you get your talented group of friends together to make a movie, and it doesn't suck, you know. But no, it was a blast. I mean, I had a lot of fun. I liked all the small cameos. I thought I liked that the cameos weren't overdone. There were no giant A-list celebrities. You know, you didn't get a Tom Cruise or anything like that, because you get the sense that that's not the crowd that those celebrities hang out with. I mean, you got a good group of celebrities that felt like they were friends who you would assume would hang out together at a party. But I think I love about all those disaster films, the same as like zombie movies, that it's always about the interaction between the people, not just the event that's going on. So watching all of them, kind of watching their, friendship get tested in different ways, I thought that was a lot of fun. That's the stuff that you don't expect in a kind of silly comedy and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I had mentioned to these guys that my favorite part of this film is the fact that they all played like versions of themselves. So. Yeah. But and like I love that every one of them had moments where they all kind of wanted to bail. I love when they drew straws the second time, and I like when they drew straws the second time, and Seth Rogen kind of got called it, and he was just like, "Nope, not going." That was great, Or when or when they went to the other house to search for food, and Jay was kind of like, "Why go back?" Yeah.
That stuff was a lot of fun for me. And Jonah Hill, I mean, I thought Jonah Hill was great. I mean, this is what he called. This was a big swing and a hit for me. I really enjoyed the movie. I had a really good time watching it. It was just fun.
Yeah.
You kind of go in and just enjoy it. And I mean, there are some jokes that were just silly, just silly jokes that, I just couldn't stop laughing at. I thought they were hilarious. So it was a good time. It was a lot of fun.
All right. I'm glad you liked it. All three of us liked it on here also. So that's 4 positive reviews for this movie in this one episode. So awesome. Did you get a chance to see Man of Steel?
No, I mean, I was on the fence. I was on the fence on Man of Steel. I mean, I was really excited when I first saw the trailers for it, and it was, and that just kind of tapered away. If I had just seen the trailer before, like on Thursday, I think I would have gone to see it as a compulsive watch. It was like the equivalent of a compulsive buy in a store. Trailer got me excited. I thought, I'm gonna run out and see this, and then enough time passed where it just kind of dawned on me that, man, it's just another Superman movie. I'm really happy with the Superman movie I got when I was a kid. And I don't know. I mean, I don't feel the need to run out to the theater to watch, Superman again.
Okay.
Hey, Miguel,
did you guys get a chance to see it?
We all saw it. We're going to talk about it here in a little bit. But go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to bring up that you should see Man of Steel as soon as possible.
Okay, well that's good. I mean,
your whole family too. Even if they're not watching the movie, just bring your whole family.
I'm starting to think this has more to do with the draft than it does with the actual movie.
No, come on. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll let you guys go. Good luck on the draft.
Okay.
Well,
Right.
I just want to point out that Miguel is a pro. I mean, we put him on the spot, and he banged out a great review.
You should hear our conversations all the time. This is our phone conversations always go like this. So not quite as well structured, but yeah.
You should just record it every time, Dave. conversation. Just plug it into it.
I knew Miguel is good under pressure about talking about stuff like that. So